This next chapter is all about color. But before we actually get started using the color tools inside of Illustrator, I think it's important that we discuss the differences between RGB and CMYK color. These are the two color modes that we have the ability to choose from when we create a new document in Illustrator. And you saw earlier when we were changing the new document profiles that RGB and CMYK kept sort of flip-flopping depending on which profile we chose. Let's talk about why that is. RGB color stands for red, green, and blue. This color mode is the same color mode that you see right now on whatever screen you're watching this course on, whether it's your cell phone, your computer monitor, or your television. All of those use red, green, and blue dots to make up all of the colors that you see. Whereas CMYK, or cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, are all colors that are used in commercial print. So the magazines that you see, business cards, brochures, all that kind of stuff, that's all printed using a printing press that can lay down all of these different colors of ink, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and then added together, they form just about any color in the spectrum. When it comes to deciding what color mode to use in your Illustrator documents, I can sum it up for you in two very easy to remember statements. Number one, if it goes on a screen, make it red, blue, and green. That's right. If the output of your file is going to be on a mobile device, a computer, a television, or a tablet, you should use the red, green, and blue, or RGB color space. Number two, if you'll print it someday, choose CMYK. If you're going to send this file out to commercial print where they're going to be using cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to print it, then chances are you need to develop that file in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black color mode, or CMYK, to ensure that the colors look just as good on your monitor as they do in the finished product. As you start to create projects for both print and web, you may come across a time when you need to adjust the color settings in Illustrator, whether it be mandated by the printer that you're using, or maybe you need to put your RGB files in a different color space so that they look good on the web. In either case, you need to be really familiar with where those settings are in Illustrator. So this time, let's go up to the Edit menu and go down to where it says Color Settings, or you can simply press Shift-Command-K on the Mac, Shift-Control-K on the PC. Up at the top here, you're going to notice that this synchronized text is listed up here. It says synchronized. Your Creative Cloud applications are synchronized using the same color settings for consistent color management. Basically, what that means is if you make this change one place, it's going to happen everywhere else. That makes it super simple for you to have a cohesive workflow across all of the Creative Cloud apps. Now, at the very top here where the drop-down menu is, you can see that there are several different color spaces that you have the ability to choose from. So you have things like Monitor Color, North America General Purpose 2, North America Newspaper, North America Prepress, North America Web and Internet, or North America General Purpose, which is listed down here at the bottom. Now, depending on where you are in the world and what version of Illustrator you have installed, you may see different versions of these color modes listed here, and that's okay. All of them are going to be conducive to the workflows that exist in your respective country. Now, directly underneath here, you will see two different boxes. One is called Working Spaces, and one is called Color Management Policies. In the Working Spaces section, that is going to determine when you create a new file, what is the working space, the document itself, what type of color model are you going to accept. In this case, the RGB, you can choose between Monitor RGB, Adobe RGB, Apple RGB, Color Match RGB, ProPhoto, or sRGB. Now, in most cases, sRGB is going to be the best color mode for displaying graphics on the web, and that's probably why it is considered to be part of the default for the North American general purpose. As far as CMYK goes, this is going to vary based on printers. You can actually load up custom settings from your printers by clicking the Load button if they send them to you. If not, you're probably better off just by using the US web-coded SWAP v2. Or you can choose from any one of these other ones that are listed here, but I'd be very careful changing that unless you're absolutely sure. You should also check to make sure that you don't need to change it to sheet-fed, coded, or uncoded. It's all dependent on what type of printer you're working with and what type of printing process they're using. Directly underneath that, you will see Color Management Policies. Inside of the color management policies, this is going to determine what Illustrator does in the event that you open up a file that doesn't really jive with the color mode that you're using inside of Illustrator. So let's say, for instance, that you've selected that you're going to work in sRGB and US web-coded SWAP v2. Then you open up a file that's in Adobe RGB or US Web Uncoded Swap, something like that. What happens? Does Illustrator ignore it? Does Illustrator ask you to do something? What happens? That's where this little dropdown comes in. So for the RGB space, what do you want to do? Do you want to preserve the embedded profiles? You can see when I hover over this, it gives me a definition of the bottom of what this is going to do. So it says this will always preserve the embedded color profiles in newly opened documents. For colors imported to RGB, color appearance overrides numeric values. For colors imported to CMYK, numeric values override appearance. So basically this says, if you bring in a file that doesn't match the sRGB space, we're going to do our best to make sure that we preserve that embedded color profile. You can set this to be off. That means you are not going to care about it. You're not going to color manage it at all. Or you can choose to convert the file into your working color space. However, choosing convert to working space may cause a slight color shift depending on the differences between the color spaces that you choose. So it's always good, I think, to have this checked. Profile mismatches, just ask when opening. Then you can also have ask when pasting checked as well. Basically, that means if you copy something from a document that has a different color space than the one you're working in, the new document will automatically ask you. It'll say, hey, wait a minute, this is in a different color space. Is it okay that we paste this in here, or would you like for me to convert it over? In any case, you can have it ask you each time. The same as if a profile is missing from the document, you can have it ask. I actually think that having these checked is a great safeguard to make sure that you get the best color management possible. Once you have everything taken care of here, just go ahead and click OK, and all of those settings will then be applied. There are two distinct types of color swatches inside of Adobe Illustrator. One is called global colors and one is called a process color. By default, you use process colors inside of Illustrator, which just means that each one of the elements inside of your design is treated as if it has its own unique color applied to it, even if you've used the exact same color swatch from the swatches panel. Whereas global swatches act as sort of a template of color that can easily be applied to multiple elements throughout your design. Let's take a look at exactly what this means. So here inside my example, I have two color wheels. The one on the left is the process color swatches, and the one on the right, which I can access by double-clicking the global artboard, is using global color swatches. So let's double-click on the process color swatch first. And then let's go into the swatches panel and see exactly what I'm talking about. I'll open up the swatches panel here and bring it out into the document, and then I'll expand it out a little bit so you can see it. Anytime you have an object selected on screen, you will notice that there is a little white outline around the current color swatch that it's using in the swatches panel. So right here, this orange color is being used by this particular element. When I'm using a process color, which is what we're using here, that means anytime I make a change to this color that's being used on this element, it will not be applied to any other element using that exact same color. So for instance, let's say that I double click on this swatch right here and we make a change to that, something kind of like that, and just hit OK. You notice that when that change is applied, none of the other elements which are using that color, and they all are, by the way, all of these colors are the same, they're just changed opacity to make it look like a subtle gradient. None of those change when I update that swatch. If I go to Edit, Undo Swatch Change, everything goes back to normal and none of the colors change. Whereas if I go over to the other artboard, double-clicking Global, and I make a change to the orange swatch over here, you'll notice it's not highlighted up at the top. It's actually down here at the bottom. And these little color swatches all have a small white triangle in the bottom right-hand corner. That indicates that they are a global swatch. That means anytime I make a change to any one of these swatches, every single object in my design that's using that color swatch will be updated with the new color information. So if I double-click here, and I come in to make a change to this, like let's say I add just a little bit more red to this and maybe back down a little bit on the green to make it a little bit more of a richer orange, and then back out on the blue just a little bit as well. If I were to click preview right here, you can see that subtle change in all of those orange elements right there. Let's do something a little extreme here. Let's change this, for instance, to a green color. Watch what happens to all of the objects using that color swatch. They all change to green. That's the power of a global color swatch. Now, if I move this back to change it back to orange, everything goes back to normal. Hit OK, and there we go. Our global color swatch has been updated, and anything using that color swatch in the design has been updated as well. Global color swatches are a great thing if you have multiple objects using the exact same color in a design. But how do you create a global color swatch? Let's take a look. First thing you want to do is create something that needs a global color swatch applied to it. So in this case, let's just grab some shapes. Let's grab some circles here. So we'll grab a circle and make one here, and make one here. Now, currently, they're all using the same swatch, but it's not a global swatch. So let's change the color of these so that they're unique. Let's change it to kind of a light blue. And then once I have that light blue applied to all of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this empty color group right here for process color. That's what it says when I hover over it, but we don't have any process color stored there. So we'll just use this as our secondary global swatch area. And what I'll do here is click New Swatch. And inside of this, there's a little check mark for global. So I'll hit that, and you can make any changes to this that you want. Let's make it just a little bit lighter blue, for instance. So my values are 89, 175, 255, and then I'll hit OK. Once I hit OK, all three of them change, and I now have a new global color swatch. Anytime I want to make a change to that color swatch, I can do so. I don't even have to be using those particular objects. I could be anywhere else in my document. Notice I have nothing selected. If I double click on that swatch now and make a change, like let's make this kind of a deeper rich blue, and I hit preview, all three of those dots change. So all you have to be mindful of is this little check mark right here. And it does work for both RGB and CMYK color spaces. So it doesn't matter if you're creating for print or for web. You can have global color swatches and quickly and easily change everything that uses that swatch anytime in your document. In the previous movie, I showed you how to create process color swatches and also global process color swatches so that you have the ability to control those colors all throughout your design. In this movie, we're going to talk about another type of color swatch, something called a spot color. Now, spot colors are kind of the same as a global color in that they are going to be able to be changed all throughout the document, but they are a very specific use case. Most of the time, it's when a brand or a business has a very specific color that they use for one attribute of their branding. So, for instance, Coca-Cola Red or Pepsi Blue would be a spot color, a very specific color that needs to be reproduced consistently every single time. So you can use the swatches panel inside of Illustrator to do this. So let's say, for instance, that the Happy Bulldog text here, that red color, is something that we need to be reproduced consistently all the time, and we want to create a spot color for that. In order to do that inside of the swatches panel, all we have to do is have that object selected and then click on the New Swatch button. Once we have the New Swatch dialog box open, we can give this a name at the top. So I'll call this Bulldog Red. And then we switch the color type to spot color. You'll notice that when I change the color type to spot color, that the global check mark is grayed out, but it's also active at the same time. That's because spot colors are, by default, always global. So that if you come in here and you mix the ink on this color, it will automatically update everywhere in the document that you're using it. So let's go ahead and hit OK here. And when we hit OK, we're going to see a new swatch has been added to our swatches panel. And when I hover over it, it says Bulldog Red. You'll also notice that it has the same white triangle in the bottom right-hand corner that a global swatch does. But there's an addition to that. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. It's really small, but that little black dot in the corner signifies that this is a spot color. In most cases, this is going to be used, like I said, to reproduce a very specific color, but it can also be used to represent things like varnishes and metallic textures as well. You may also be requested to use a Pantone color, in which case you would have to load in a custom spot color from the Pantone library. In any case, it's fairly easy to create and use your own spot colors inside of Illustrator. Just be sure you convey that you're using spot colors to your printer when you send whatever it is you're working on out for commercial jobs. Organization is one of the biggest keys to becoming a more efficient graphic designer. And in this movie, I'm going to show you how to get a little bit more organized into your swatches panel by using something called color groups. You can see inside of my swatches panel over here, these little folder icons. These are called color groups, and you're able to create them inside of Illustrator by clicking this little folder icon at the bottom of the swatches panel. When you click this button, it's going to automatically ask you to name your new color group. So for this, let's just call this Bulldog Colors. Then we'll hit OK. Once we hit OK, it's going to assume that the default white color is one of the colors we want in here. If it's not, just select it, and then you can hit the delete key right here. Click yes to delete the swatch selection, and you're good to go. Now let's zoom in on this document a little bit, and I'm going to select the Happy Bulldog text. Then I'll select the color group. I want to select that first because that's going to enable me to put a new swatch inside of it. And then I'll click the New button here. And in this case, what I'm going to do is switch this back over to another spot color like we did before. We'll call this Bulldog Red, and we'll hit OK. Once we do that, the new swatch appears right there. Let's go ahead and target the color group again. And this time, let's zoom in on the Bulldog's face. And let's select a piece of his face to get the colors out of it. When you click on him, he's going to be all one group. So double click to enter isolation mode, and then you can get the other colors. So we're going to double click until I get in there to target that tan color. Then I'll hit the new swatch button here. We'll call this Bulldog Tan. I'm not going to make it a spot color, but I will make it a global color so that it automatically updates anywhere that we use it in the document. Then I'm going to double click to get back out. Double click on his face. Double click again to get in there until I get that gray color. Select the group. Put the new swatch in there. We'll call this Bulldog Gray. Hit OK. And there we go. So we've got basically the 3 brand colors there. We may also want to throw black in there because black is one of the colors. So let's select that. And then we'll just select this object here. Select that. Create a new swatch. Bulldog Black. And hit OK. Now you notice I didn't make the other 2 global swatches. I probably should have, and I can do that anytime I want by double-clicking them and assigning the global property. I assign the global property to these because if I'm going to be using this as a branding color group, it makes sense to keep everything consistent across the board. So if at any time the client comes back and says, you know what, we really don't like that gray, it needs to be darker, I can just double-click on this swatch, rework it one time, and everything in the document updates. As I take on more clients and I get more work coming through my Illustrator workspace, it makes really good sense to get these color groups going. So no matter what you're working on, take the time to set up these color groups for your projects. It's a great way to keep you organized and help you become more efficient. Adobe Color is a great website for finding and creating inspiring color palettes. And in this movie, I'm going to show you how to use your Adobe Color color themes inside of Illustrator. But first, if you've never been to Adobe Color, go to color.adobe.com. This service used to be called Cooler, K-U-L-E-R, but Adobe has since renamed it to Adobe Color CC. You can sign in using the same user ID and password that you do for Creative Cloud, and when you do, anything you create and save inside of this website will automatically be available to you inside of the Color Themes panel of Adobe Illustrator. If you'd like more information on using Adobe Color, check out my course, which is named after the former name of this, Cooler. It's called Cooler Essential Training. The user interface is exactly the same. It's just a different name. And I walk you through how to use just about everything there is to know inside of this web application. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show you my themes. Inside of my themes, I have this theme that a client sent me called Coffee Shop, let's say. And so I've been working on this graphic, this coffee shop graphic, and the colors that I chose weren't exactly what they wanted for their brand. So they gave me some examples, and I put them into Adobe Color. And once I had them in color, I now want to bring them into Adobe Illustrator. Now, even if you have access to the exercise files for this course, you won't be able to pull this in from your color themes panel because you and I have different login information. So don't worry if you don't see this right off the bat. You can create these colors on your own if you want to, or create your own color themes using Adobe Color. But in this case, this is just for demonstration. I'll go right over here to the panels. You can see the Adobe Color logo. And when I hover over it, it says Color Themes. When I open that up, you can see there's all of the different color themes I have inside of my Adobe Color profile. So I have all different types, but the one that I don't see is the coffee shop. So what I need to do is sync all of my color themes, and then right there at the top, there's the coffee shop. Now I'll drag this out so you can see this entire panel, and I'll also drag out the swatches panel so you can see that as well. and I'll just kind of dock these right next to each other. In order to get all of these colors into the Adobe Illustrator swatches panel, all I have to do is click on the color group symbol, and that adds a color group right there into my swatches panel. I can then move the color themes panel back to where it came from, so let's just move that back over here and close that up. And let's keep the swatches panel on here for a second and watch. These act just like normal swatches now. All I have to do is select an object, apply the color, select, apply, and I'll select these two brown ones, add that in, change the color of the heart, and also update these elements as well. So there we go. You see, that's pretty easy. And you have access to Adobe Color not just on the desktop either. You actually have a whole mobile application called Adobe Color, which allows you to use your camera on your smartphone to capture colors no matter where you are. And so I constantly use this when I'm looking at signs or printed brochures, things like that. If I find color palettes that inspire me, I take a picture with my phone and I turn it into an Adobe Color theme. It makes it super easy for me to get that back into Illustrator later for better use in my projects. In the previous movie, we talked about using the Adobe Color service to bring in your color themes directly into Illustrator. But I understand that not everybody wants to use that service or has access to it, and from time to time, you may actually get colors from someone else as a .ase file or Adobe Swatch Exchange file. When and if that happens, I want you to be prepared. So let me show you how to bring in an Adobe Swatch Exchange file for use in your projects. First thing we're going to do is open up the Swatches panel. You can find it by going to Window and selecting Swatches. And once you have that open, just click on this little library link right here. And then at the bottom, there's a little option for Other Library. Go ahead and click on that. Then I'm going to navigate out to my desktop, look in my exercise files, Chapter 8, and we're going to go to coffeeshop.ase and hit Open. Once that opens up, there are the colors from the coffee shop, the same color theme that I got from Adobe Color. All I have to do now, click on the color group, they're added in, and I can use them just like any other swatch in Illustrator. So if you ever get a .ase file from somebody, don't panic. It's pretty easy once you know how to get it in here.